My name is Verne Sanford and I live in Valparaiso, Indiana. Well, I've had a disability for many, many years, and I've used to attend conferences on low vision. And this time I just kind of branched out and attended this one on all disabilities. I think because we're trying to form a coalition of all disabilities in Valparaiso to approach the mayor, become a mayor's advisory council.
I see. Okay.
One day in school I could not read what the teacher had written on the board. She invited me to stand up by the board, a very embarrassing thing for me to do. I still could not read what she had written. It happened rather suddenly. I, of course, could not understand what was happening. And I was misdiagnosed in those days as having Stargardt's disease, which is an early onset of macular degeneration. And later, of course, by now, they're aiming at two other diseases, one of them genetic, called choroideremia, and the other one being a fungus that gets in the lungs and sometimes goes to the eyes. It's called histoplasmosis. When I was in grade school, I, as I said, could not read the blackboard. I could also then not read printed pages too, unless they were enlarged at that time. So my mother became my reader through grade school and through high school also, she and her 8th grade education. And as I was coming out of high school, I was able to graduate with my class, and boy, I was happy about that. My father told me, I'm not going to drive trucks. So he suggested, there are so many things closed to me that I need a lot of education. He said, keep going in education as far as you can. So that's the route that I chose at that time. When I got to college, vocational rehabilitation provided a reader. And a person would come to my house and read my assignments to me. Sometimes I slept through the reading. I didn't mean to, depending on what he was reading. I started majoring in mathematics at that time. And that was, I always figured that was somewhat easier because you can read a mathematical equation or a theorem and you can think about that for hours. And you don't have to do any more reading. In other subjects, I would have to read and read and read, such as history or social science or something like that.
That's interesting.
So I chose mathematics. The teachers assisted me by, at that time, writing quizzes and exams and things in large print, which I could handle somewhat, or else oral examinations, which I kind of dreaded, but one-on-one with the teacher is not so much fun sometimes. And with my mother reading to me at home, it was just sort of natural. I just stayed in the public school. Yeah, I did. I didn't go off to any special school, and I didn't need Braille. I didn't use Braille. In order to be able to read what I wrote, I could always write. Anybody can write, but reading it back is the problem. So I used to use crayons or various grease pencils that grocers use in their store. I used anything that would make a broad line that I could then use when I was reading the material back again. And larger print helped me, so I'd write things in large print. Of course, the big invention in my life was the felt marker. And then I could really write nicely and large and dark, and then I could read. I became a good listener, of course, when my mother was reading, so that's how I got through college. I listened to instructors as they worked on the board. One that would not say what he or she was writing on the board was awful for me, just terrible. I had to have the person saying what they wrote. But I had other people taking notes for me too, so I went on to a lot of schooling and many degrees. I was up in Grand Forks, North Dakota at that time, and I went to the University of North Dakota, which was maybe most of a mile from my house. I could walk out there. And I took 2 degrees there, both in mathematics, bachelor's and master's. Then later I went off to University of Michigan and got another master's degree and PhD. Had some experience in teaching, and even a little bit at the University of Michigan. I was tutoring, if not actually teaching, I was tutoring while I was in grad school. Somehow I ended up at Valparaiso University for 1 year before Michigan, and then later came back there and had my career there teaching mathematics. When I retired, I was singing with the barbershop chorus, which took an enormous amount of time. I gave that up to learn how to operate my talking computer, which I was successful at after struggling. And then, just because of innate curiosity, I think, I read a lot about low vision, a lot about eye diseases. I have a number of newsletters and magazines and things sent to my house, emails and so on. And I try to keep up on the research and the treatments and hints on how to live successfully with low vision. And I now run 2 low vision support groups in Valparaiso. We've been running those since 2002. And just of late, we now are a non-profit organization in Indiana. And we're in the middle of applying for our 501c3 tax exempt status from the IRS. So once we have those, we can branch out. We don't have to have just meetings monthly anymore. We can raise funds, help people buy expensive equipment, visual aids and things, go from there. I'm excited about that possibility. We have at our low vision support group meetings on occasion vendors that show us all of their equipment and pass equipment around so that people can handle it and see how the different magnifiers work and the different monoculars work and so on. And then after they display all of this equipment, they of course are faced with the question by somebody in the group, if not more than one, how much do these cost? And when they're told how much they cost, they just cringe. They just can't afford to buy this equipment. There are a lot of things available. Technology is just out of sight these days. There's all kinds of fancy things available, all kinds of assistive aids. But it's so expensive that the common person cannot afford it. And it's so frustrating to me and to them too. I suppose that's why we're trying to become tax exempt and nonprofit, so we can help people with some of that. I hope we can.